What's up, guys? How are you? How is your Sunday? How's your week? How's all the things? It's been a hot minute since we had the Bodhiverse on, and I figured that when we come back for season five, we might as well bring other people with us that, know their shit. So, I'm just gonna put it like that. So, my first guest for this season is Uncle Bert, and I'm really excited because I know that I found you on TikTok like years ago and then you were gone. And then I was like, okay, like you just got off my algorithm. And then I found you again with a video about um what was it? There's been a whole bunch that have come across my feed that I'm like,
Look,
"Ooh, let me fall down the rabbit
Hecate,
hole of this." So, tell everybody about you. About you. Tell me about you.
Uncle Birch had been a teacher of witchcraft for 40 some odd years, since I was about 13 years old. Been here on YouTube for close to 20 years. I got probably 10,000 followers, but up until like a couple of years ago, I made myself really hard to find because like being totally public and just teaching any random person, that was kind of frowned upon. So you had to search for Freak Phil 1309 to find me. So you had to, I had to tell you the address before you'd even go there. And then, after getting into TikTok and all that, I just changed it to Uncle Birch. So if anybody ever gives me a hard time, I just say, hey, Google me, bitch. I'm the only Uncle Birch. There's plenty of other tree names. There's way too many willows and aspens. Uh, but I'm the only Uncle Birch. Ash, but nobody chose Birch. And then that was my craft name forever. And then somehow, as I got older, somebody attached Uncle to it, and it just kind
Okay.
of stuck.
I was going to ask why you chose birch. Birch is one of my favorite woods.
Yeah. The first witch store to open in my hometown at the time, Santa Cruz, you had to pick a witch name to be known by in the store.
Hmm.
And I chose birch because it's the first tree in the Druidic alphabet of trees. It is the gateway to the other world. And being that, wandering into a witch store when I was young changed my entire life, I knew that was my job. I was there to change people's lives, help send them on their path, help them find their path, and hopefully, change it for good.
I I love that. I love that you said that because a lot of people I think feel that way. They find witchcraft or they find Wicca or they find druidism or some type of pagan practice and it hits them in here so hard that they know like this is what I'm going to do. And I'm sure growing up in California was a lot different than, Oklahoma or Arkansas or Colorado or whatever. Um,
Right.
so how do you think that experience and growing up in California affected you now? Do you think you would have been different if you had grown up in New York or in central USA, or do you think that would have changed?
I don't know. Something happened to me when I was 9 years old, and uh, I saw the meaning of the entire universe and couldn't explain it to my parents. So I would think that that probably would have happened wherever I was. It was definitely easier. I never thought I'd be in the South. My entire life on the map in my mind, the entire South just said Darby Dragons, and somehow I ended up in New Orleans, but which is it's definitely Southern, but not like Alabama or something like
Yep.
scary like that.
Yep. I love me some New Orleans. I hate that I haven't. I usually go twice a year, just once for work and once to just not be anywhere else. Does that make sense? Like to just immerse
um,
myself in, you know, the magic of the quarter. Like, and I know people
yeah.
go, they look at it to party and drunk, and don't get me wrong, the people watching is fantastic and that is one of my favorite things, but
Hmm.
the magic that's down there and the deep rooted, deep seated practices and so on, you feel it as a spiritual person, someone in witchcraft or magic, like you feel it the minute you get close, like your skin starts to get electrified. And so what brought you to New
Yeah.
Orleans?
Let's see. 2019 Hex Fest. I was booked to teach 3 classes on magical warfare, and back then the Catholic Church was still protesting Hexfest. They kind of gave up during COVID and never came back, but they did a video about the evil things going on at Hexfest. It was on YouTube, and they named 4 classes that were the most evil classes on the bill. 3 of them were mine, and the
You
last one,
heretic.
and the last one, I remember the guy says, "And magical warfare, crush the enemy." I said, when we finally get there, I'm going to find that guy and I'm going to hire him as a motivational speaker, just walk behind me all day long and just keep going, crush the enemy, crush the enemy. But Catholics never came back, never found that guy. But Hex was, I brought my strongest stuff. I didn't really know what Hexfest was, but based on the name and the nature, I said, all right, I got to bring some really volatile shit. I can't, just teach some spell crafts or something like that. I got to teach something that nobody would have the balls to teach at any other festival. And I brought my strongest stuff, the Magical Warfare series, thinking, well, they're never going to have me back anyway. So let's get it over with. And now, I've been booked for every Hex Fest since and have to try and outdo that first session. And I think last time one of them was Magical Warfare Fighting Dirty from the Circle to the Streets. And that was
I
quite a
want to
class.
take that class. Like, I want to take that class.
I will probably do a version of that for my witch school, but you can't post the Hexfest classes.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
I guess I may have to
And
go
then
next year. Every time
so that
every time I
so
try
that
to
is fun.
go, something has come up, and I'm like, all right, well, it's just
Mhm.
not time. It's just not time for me to
Yeah,
go. So I'm like, all right, I'll go when I go, I guess, because I have a lot of
yeah,
friends down there that I come to visit, and so I'll
yeah.
have to come
Well,
have
yeah,
coffee
like you
with you
said,
when I come down.
absolutely. Well, like you said, the magic of the place, it gets a hold of you. That's August 2019. We were back by November looking for a house. Then we're pulling up out front in January, and then just a few months later, COVID happened.
Oh wow,
And
so
there was a lot of things like my wife has a medical problem that didn't exist once we got to New Orleans, and came back once we left. So that
wow.
alone would have been enough of a reason to come to New Orleans. Now, she does have symptoms again that I don't know if they would be worse if we weren't immersed in the magic of New Orleans,
Hmm.
because it was that alone would have been enough. But there was just so much. Like, we're kind of old. Like in Hollywood, if we got like a babysitter and had date night, we'd be home by 10. And here we were out at potions till like 4 in the morning. Something that this kind of just it keeps you celebrating.
I I think that's fantastic. I think that's
Mhm.
fantastic. I think people fail to realize that it's not just the climate of a place. It's not just, what kind of medical care is there. There are certain places in Colorado that I grew up, going to and so on. And when I get there, I could be like, my sugar could be up and down. I'm having bad brain days, but I get to this place that's known for just the magic of the place. Like Boulder is one, and I just feel better. I feel at home. I feel at
Mhm.
ease and so on. There's places in Arizona that are the same way. I get there and I'm like, I sleep better. I don't have the problems that I have. And so I
Yeah.
understand that completely. And I think that's fantastic that New Orleans has been so awesome for her.
Well,
I know that's a worry off your plate too.
I've often said the difference between us and them is pagans celebrate and they celebrate. And New Orleans is all about celebrating
Hmm.
everything. It's like you get married, you get a parade. You get buried, you get a parade. We got parades for potholes. Everything's a celebration.
That's one thing I do love. I usually when I come down, I stay in the quarter. I have a couple hotels that are, my favorites, and I kind of switch around and stuff. And I think that they're like, I'm actually racking my brain to try to figure out if there has ever been a time when I haven't seen a parade, a celebration, a
Yeah.
protest, like some gathering of people in the streets marching along, and I can't think of one. Like I
Yeah, and
legit
even
can't think of one.
the protests are like a celebration. Like
Yes.
I was an activist for a great portion of my life in Santa Cruz and all over California, and it was boring. It was marching, chanting, carrying the signs. Like we're dancing with those signs here.
Yeah.
We had the No Kings protest was just like a giant second line.
When I was down there last, there was a Free Palestine protest, and we heard the music before we heard the chanting, and I'm like, "That's got to be a parade! Like, let's go!" And yeah, it was fantastic. Everybody was dressed up, and it was yeah, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. But I want to talk about deities. I've been dying to talk to you about different deities and so on because I got fascinated with your video about the purple lady and Hecate and all of that. And so I want to talk about that, and I wanted to talk about I've been in all of this for over 30 years, and I watch the ebb and flow, and I know you know exactly what that means. A whole bunch of people come in and they drop out. I watch this, and everybody
Mhm.
works with Hecate, and then they don't, and I watch all those things happen. And one of the things that it kind of infuriates me on TikTok is that I see people insisting, I'm gonna work with this deity, I'm gonna work with this person, and I'm like, I'm not sure it works that way. Like, are you sure about that? So I kind of
Yeah.
want your take on all of that because I'm curious how you feel about it since you've been in this realm longer than I have.
Well, yeah, I know the belief that they choose you, and when somebody like Hecate chooses you, you'd be a fool not to go along. She's hardcore, but she was always like the prime goddess of witchcraft when I was growing up, and then somewhere in the '90s when I was working at a witch store, one of my I got a friend of mine a job, and he was like a Thelemite.
Hmm.
And we noticed one day, we ran to the bookshelves to look up something for a new moon ritual. And we started cracking up books, and there's nothing in there. It says Espit, but they're just talking about a full moon. When I was growing up, an Espit was a full moon or a new moon, depending
Hmm.
on where you were in the calendar. And so we started cracking books. And we said all of the standard books that were out there this Wicca was the dominant force
Hmm.
then, and they had whitewashed it so much that they had whitewashed out the dark goddess. We couldn't find one in any of the contemporary works out there.
Wow.
And so we started searching for those books to put them on the shelves. And when we broke off to start our own shop, we put an emphasis on classes about the dark goddess and trying to bring her back. And then it seemed like we were on a vibe. There was a vibe out there in the universe that we just kind of tapped into because authors right around then started spitting out books about the dark goddess. And then we started, Nyx. There was a book about Nyx, and there was books about Hecate, and all of them. And so the world was shifting right around the time that we noticed it, and we just, tapped into the thread, I guess. Mm. Ooh, the
So
kombucha's strong today.
the the what's strong today?
Kombucha, I make my own kombucha.
Oh,
It's
okay,
probably
okay.
the one healthy thing that I do is kombucha.
I have never tried it. I have a lot of friends that try to get me to, and I have never tried it. I am like the most, no, okay, not the most unhealthy person, but because I travel a lot, I eat so much McDonald's that I joke that I'm never gonna die because I'm probably petrified from the inside. But like
You got a lot of
sometimes you
preservatives.
just need fries when you're pissy on the road. Like you just need French
Mhm.
fries. But I want to ask you, I want to have you kind of give a rundown a little bit of the story that you told about the purple lady coming into the shop because that is exactly what that feeling, and I could feel it when you were talking about it on that video, but that feeling is exactly what people need to, I guess, look for when somebody is coming in. And I'm going to let you talk about that, and then I want to tell something that very similar with a different deity that happened to me. So people understand, because one of the questions I get a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is how do I know if a deity is poking at me or wanting to work with me? And my answer is usually, you know, but
Yeah. Okay. Story time. Um,
we all love story time.
I've often said the one constant in the universe is irony. And when a deity arrives, it's with a sense of irony. You'll like see it and go, oh my God, that's totally her right there. And so we're working at the shop before we owned our own shop. And we talked the owner into letting us make some stuff. So the first thing that I made was an Hecate incense with an old recipe that I had. And I had one of those Dutch doors. So the top door in the front was open, the bottom was closed. And so we're testing it out, we're smelling it, and it's wafting through the room. And I'm looking at, watching how the smoke moves, and just kind of getting a feel for it. And just as the smoke went out the door, this big, loud, vociferous woman, all purple. She had a purple pants, purple blouse, big purple hat with a purple plume in it, big gaudy purple costume jewelry. And she just bursts in the door and goes, hello, boys. And starts going through the room counterclockwise, Widdershins, and stopping at all the darkest stuff like skulls. She'd pick them up and pet them. And we had these squeaky nuns, which were a sacrament for the parking god Squatch. And she's squeaking the nun. And she had the best witch cackle of any witch I've ever known. And she moved through, she picked up a statue of Kali and said, hello, sister. And then she went to Durga and she did the same thing with Durga. And just all the way through the room, just stopping at the darkest stuff, cackling under her breath. And me and my friend, the Thelemite, we were just watching it all happen, knowing exactly what we're seeing right here. And she gets to the door and she turns back and she goes, lovely aroma, boys. Ta-ta. And she's out the door, and we ran to that door. And we popped our heads out there, and she got in a purple convertible with purple interior, purple walls, like white walls, but they're purple. I didn't even know that was a thing. And then as she pulls away, we looked at her plate, and a personalized plate, PRPL the purple lady. And we go, oh my God, well, we're sticking with that recipe.
I listened to that video like 3 times, because it's interesting when you meet someone like that. And I said someone on purpose because to me, there's no coincidences in the universe. To me, that 100% was that deity coming in to visit, to enjoy the worship, or whatever it was that drew her in. And I think that's what people need to understand, is that and it's funny that you mentioned Kali, in that I went through a phase in 2019 through 2020 where Kali kept coming around, everything. And I live in Tulsa, in Oklahoma. Like, there's not a large Hindu population here. We have a phenomenal Hindu temple here, but I had never been. I'm not Hindu, I'm not Indian. I don't know about any of that. So what I knew about her was that she's a destruction deity. And I'm like, no, like, business is going good. Like, my life is good. Like, don't need destruction. Like, thanks. But it kept happening. I would walk in a store and make sure I'm not bumping anything, and a statue of her would fall off. And I'd be like, okay, like, we don't want to hurt you, things like that. It kept happening. Hibiscuses kept happening, like, things like that. And the whole time, I'm like, okay, like, no, I appreciate it, but no. And I went on vacation with someone I was dating, and we're in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And people that have followed me may have heard this story. But the entire trip up there, it's only like a 4-hour drive. But I was telling him how weird it was that there was a Hindu deity that kept circling around. And he's like, well, do you know much about her? Obviously, she's around for a reason. The only thing I knew was that she's destruction, And he was like, yeah, don't need that, So we kind of made a joke about it. So we go check in and we go have dinner at this weird place that's there. It's like a biker bar slash burger joint slash, I don't know. It's built in the side of the mountain, but the food is phenomenal. So we went there. We're sitting outside on the patio, and our little waitress is like bubbly, and she bounces up and she's like, hi guys, I'll be your waitress, and blah, 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 blah. And I notice on the bottom of her sleeve is a tarot card. I can see about this much of the bottom of this tattoo, right? And I know immediately that thing. I see that there's a man laying there with 2 feet on top, and I said, do you have a tattoo of Kali on your shoulder? And she's like, I do. And she pulls her sleeve up in this miraculous fashion. And the guy I'm dating goes, like his whole jaw fell open. He looks at me, looks at her, he looks at me, looks at her, he looks at me, and he goes, okay then. And in that moment, I was like, fucking, okay, fine. Like I had that moment of like, okay, fine, So I spent the rest of the evening because it wasn't really in the magical stuff at all. He was like, do you think maybe you should learn what she's about? And I'm like, I mean, I guess I'm going to have to, and then I start to really fall down the rabbit hole and found out, what she is about and for and so on. And then it made sense to me, but it was one of those things where I fought against it because I was like, no, I don't need that. And it turns out I did need that in early 2021. That's exactly what happened. And it was the best thing that could have possibly happened. And so it's always interesting. So even though my story is a lot different than that, it still holds that same type of power of you're not going to ignore me kind of power.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious. I love that you mentioned that you had a friend that was a Thelemite and so on. I know what that is. I'm like, I see you over there. And I don't really want to get into that topic yet, but I would love to have you back on and talk about that topic. But in your life, in your experience with everything, what do you think is the most obscure deity that has come across your plate? I'm going to really make you think.
Mm. Obscure deity. Trying to remember Melikatus, which I believe is related to a Hindu deity. It's a blue god.
Okay.
That I was working with the fairy tradition, the Feri tradition, the Andersons, and this I'd never seen a deity like this. It was a deity about embracing your ego, from related to a tradition that's about killing your ego. And one of his rituals was you stand and look in the mirror and brush your hair and say, "Why are you so pretty?" Yeah, I borrowed that. That was Muhammad Ali that said that. But like that, it's just like, you are so beautiful and you are so powerful. And it's just that was a very obscure deity, and I never really ran into anything like that before.
That's insane. I when you said that name, I was like, I don't know that one. Like, the reason I ask
I
is
believe that's
because
the name.
the
Been a
reason
while.
I ask is that there are a lot of people that, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but I seem to notice people will ask, or they'll say, Hecate is poking me, and I'm like, well, how do you know? Or she's calling me, and I'm like, how do you know? Like, what signs, what symbols, what has happened that make you think that it's specifically her and not somebody else? And one example, this was several years ago, but I had a girl, she was insistent that was who it is. And I was like, okay, well, tell me. And she started telling me all these things, and I'm like, that's hell. Like, that's not Hecate, that's hell. Like, that's why you keep insisting on working with Hecate and nothing is working. And it took her a hot minute for her to realize that it was hell, not Hecate. And so I don't know, it's something that with deity work, I kind of wanted to see what you thought about that or how you approach that, because I'm pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, I'm like, no, sugar, that's not Kali, that's not Odin, that's this person right here. So how is that something you approach? Because in teaching classes, I am sure that it has come up because you've been teaching way longer
Yeah,
than I have.
yeah. Well, okay. Story time. we
We love story time, so feel free to story time all you want.
in one of my classes, two of my students, they're boys, and they've been having this dick measuring match for their entire lives and trying to one up each other.
Uh-huh.
And I had just taught a class. I said, look, there will come a time after, maybe a priesthood initiation or a high priesthood initiation where you will be asked to oath your life away to a goddess. It is not that time. You don't have to do that now. You don't have to dedicate yourself to anybody right now. Play the field. See what feels right. So next class, one of the boys comes in and we do like a check-in, see what kind of craft stuff's been going on. And he goes, well, I oathed myself to become a priest of Hecate last night. I go, oh, you dumbass. So next week, the other boy pipes up, I oathed myself to become a high priest of Hecate last night. Neither one of these boys followed through on their oaths. And from my following of their lives, even though we became estranged, their lives have been shit. You don't do that. When I had to do that, back in my day, around high priesthood, actually, I did it in priesthood. And then when a high priesthood came around, that's full circle all the way around the circle. There was like an initiation for each quarter, and that was full circle. And I got my calling, and Goddess wanted me to go north and do her bidding. You're going to go north, and you're going to start a school. You're going to start a shop. I need you to do this. And sent me a vague direction of where to head. And I said, oh, I got this marriage. I just put my wife through nursing school. I was kind of stuck here. She said, oh, honey, is that in your way? That's a problem for you? Oh, blew that up. I go, well, I got this career. I'm doing this cop job as an anarchist, and I'm trying to change the world from within, change the system from within. And she said, oh, no problem, baby. Boom, she blew that fucking thing up too. And it was, that was some painful stuff. The way she did it, the destruction of the goddess. Like you talked about Kali being a destruction goddess. Well, all of the dark goddesses are. You have to destroy before you can create.
Yep.
It's part of the process. So at that point, it dawned on me: do not make her say it a third time, bro. And I bailed, and stuff happened in the cop job that made me bail. This is why I've got shaky hands to this day. I got PTSD from them trying to. I almost said unalive. They try to kill me.
We're on YouTube, man. We can say shit.
And so I did. I saw a place I looked on a map. We had paper maps back then, kids. And there was this place where the redwoods went all the way to the ocean. And I said, I'm going there.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what that place is. It turned out to be Santa Cruz, California. And then I was there for like 30 years. It's where I met my wife, where I had my first child, and I had my second child there too. For my shop for 20 years, and the school started there. The correspondence courses started there. That's where I started doing YouTube videos. And now I'm like the OG. There was only a couple witches that have been doing it longer than me on YouTube, and they passed on, like a Tiptoe Witch, and there was another one. So I've been doing that a long time. And that was all because there was a kid that took one of my classes. He was like 14 years old, and he took 3 classes of a 5-class intro course, and he disappeared. And I heard somebody told me, he said, well, John's, he's on YouTube teaching witchcraft. And I said, what? And I went there and I watched his videos. And when I first contacted him, he thought I was going to be mad at him because he didn't ask permission. I said, I didn't ask permission when I started teaching, and it was a big deal. There was a lot of trouble from that. But I watched it, and this kid had absorbed everything that I had taught him and translated it into his own language and was doing a great job. It's, you're doing great, man. He goes, you should do that. And I said, what? He goes, you should teach witchcraft on YouTube. And I went, oh, you can't do what? That's against the rules. That's not traditional. I sounded so fucking old then. I think I'm like, mid 20s or late 20s then. But I sounded so old that I went and made my first video. Right then, I think my first video was on my wand, which I now always caution people not to show their ritual tools on camera. But I do that. That voice is related to the shadow.
Okay.
And the shadow is going to try and talk you out of anything that's going to do good stuff in your life. I've learned to recognize the frequency of that voice and do the opposite of whatever it suggests.
Yep.
So hopped on YouTube and started making videos. And, that leads to TikTok and Instagram and the Book of Faces. And I used to do this thing on Facebook. I go live on these channels with 100,000 witches, and it was called Ask Uncle Birch. And they would just ask questions and then I'd answer them. And nobody stumped me.
I love that. I've been teaching for about, I'm going to say about 10 years off and on. It's funny what got me into teaching it. So I grew up with a weird eclectic mix of shit. Like, that's just what I tell people. I tell people I had, upper middle class hippie parents, like legit hippie parents. And if we wanted to know something, I grew up right outside of Denver. And so we had the Denver library was phenomenal back then. And if we wanted to know something, my parents would be like, well, let's go find out. They didn't tell me, oh, well, that's dumb, or, no, your imagination is overactive. Like at 8, they were encouraging me to write to NASA about black holes because we couldn't find what I wanted to know. Like, I'm
Wow.
so glad that I grew up with parents like that, instead of parents that were like, oh, no, we don't talk about that. And so I grew up with this massive knowledge. My dad's mom is Cherokee and Potawatomi, and a healthy dose of Irish in there. And then on my mom's side, it's Irish, a lot of the granny magic, the mountain magic, things like that from, the powwow magic, the Pennsylvania Dutch coming all the way down and so on. And then, so there's an eclectic mix of shit.
That's
And
pretty eclectic.
do what?
That's pretty eclectic. Yeah.
It's a lot. And I never put it together. And this is one thing that I tell people too, is like, because I wasn't raised in or even practiced when I was younger, a structured, traditional, like, this is this deity, this is this, this is all of this stuff. I knew what you use cinnamon for. I knew what you use rosemary for. My grandparents always had weird random, I know they weren't random now as an adult, but random plants around and things like that. So I grew up learning all of those things, and I utilize that. Like when I teach folk magic, because I'm like, most of y'all grew up with this. If you grew up Baptist, we're going to put that in air quotes, Baptist or Southern Baptist, you grew up with this shit. You're like, you grew up with this shit. If you grew up with somebody speaking the devil out of you, or speaking your warts away, or speaking the fever out, or laying on of hands, like, you grew up with magic shit, like you grew up with magic. But I started really teaching in person. And then, of course, everybody was like, oh, same thing. You should do it online. You should do it online. And at first I was like, well, I don't know that I'm going to get that same connection with students online that I do sitting here seeing your face, and you can ask me questions after class and so on. And when I started teaching online in 2021, like summer of 2021. And I had big in-person classes here in Tulsa at the time. Like, we would have 20 to 30 students in Saturday classes. We did kids classes, all of that stuff. And when I started teaching online, one of the things I loved the most about it is now, instead of just teaching people locally, I had people all over the world that were taking my classes and bringing their unique questions and opinions and points of view to things. And I think that I have learned more in teaching online than I ever thought I would. And
Absolutely.
I love that you've been on for so long. I'm going to go nerd through your YouTube when we're done. I'm going to nerd through your YouTube. And
Absolutely. I've learned teaching is a learning experience. I learned so much from my students. Um, and I remember I would always, we'd always do an introduction and see like how people came to this path. And I noticed hundreds, thousands of people, damn similar story.
Hmm.
And to one of the things that you were talking about led me to this. Well, I always say the long memory is the most radical idea in the universe. And I remember the original tarot deck had two fools
Really?
in relation to the jokers,
Hmm.
and one fool had an empty rucksack, and the other fool had a full rucksack.
Okay.
And this was the two paths you can go by that Led Zeppelin talked about
Yeah.
in Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
There's still time to change the road you're on. It spoke of two accepted paths in the craft. One, you do like your year and a day of training and fill your rucksack, your bag of tricks, full of your stuff, and then skip out onto your path like the fool. The other one, you just skipped out onto your path with an empty rucksack and found things along the way to put in your bag of tricks. And those were perfectly acceptable paths in the old craft. And anything, I mean, the most staunch traditional witchcrafts that we have would be the Gardnerians, the Alexandrians, these people. And I'm a lifelong student of magic. I can see the different threads that go into the different magics, and I'm compelled to follow them back to their source. And staunch traditional or not, Gardnerian witchcraft is eclectic, and as such, so is Alexandrian witchcraft. Gardner found a whole lot of things that went good together. A lot of it comes from Solomon. What he did made a lot of sense. People are down on him now because say, "Oh, he's racist." Like, it was the 50s. Although he never said anything racist, most people were back in the 50s. It doesn't, discount the entire work. Oh, there was no black people in his tradition. It's like, he was in England. Probably wasn't a whole lot of black people in the New Forest area. So you can't hold the old ways to modern standards, and you can't expect them all to conform to what we believe now. There's something worthwhile in those old works.
I agree. I'm a big fan. I practice a lot of Solomonic magic, a lot of intensive ritual magic, and
Hmm.
I people will ask all the time about, well, how do you put it into modern language or whatever? And I have this stupid talent. We're just going to call it stupid. It's not stupid, but I many moons ago when I was a young lass, I worked in publishing companies. My first big girl job out of like I got pulled out of college to work for this company was a Christian publishing company. Like I went from working at Sonic in the afternoons and taking English literature classes to I had to go buy suits to wear to this job because I applied just for a receptionist after school and ended up as the assistant to the managing editor, the only woman managing editor. So I learned a lot about the Bible, about um, the different magical practices in there. And it was fascinating to have that massive amount jolt of that into my brain. But I found out that I have a very stupid talent for taking extremely old English, not just the thee, thou, they, my, whatever. It is like old to the point it makes your eyeballs kind of roll around, and translating it into modern English very easily. So I've done a ton of projects like that for people all over the world, and we're just going to say in Italy, um, and things like that that I can't speak about because of it. But in having that talent, it's super easy for me to take the Key of Solomon or anything in the Hermetic practices or things like that, the Greek papyri, and read them and be like, oh, okay, totally get it. Like, okay. Whereas other people are like, I don't know what that said right there. I can't get past the first sentence.
Yeah.
And I've been hesitant on teaching some of it. I do some smaller, Solomonic magic classes, but I've been a little hesitant on teaching it because, and I'm curious your opinion on this as well, because
Well, you're going to get it.
I find that a lot of people, and this is my opinion, guys, just saying this is my opinion. A lot of people want that big, immediate, I want all the power, but they don't want to put the time in. I want all of the knowledge, and I want to do these rituals and have all this stuff and be like King Solomon, but they don't want to do the time. They don't want to do the time for it. And so a lot of times I will turn people away that want to learn it because you're not ready. Like there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of stupid ingredients, like there's a lot of things like that that go into learning those older practices. And so, I mean, I've had people get really mad at me over the years, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't want to tell you. I don't.
Well, well, I'm of the opinion that most modern witchcraft has its roots in Solomonic magic and Hermetics. And my students start with the keys of Solomon right away. And I remember, I didn't have it as easy as you. It's like I had a hard time wrapping my head around that Solomonic language. And I told my witch mother that. She says, sleep on it. And I said, okay. And I came back the next day and I said, okay, it's still not wrapping my head around that. She says, well, what did you do? I said, well, I went home, went to sleep, woke up, still don't get it. And she goes, no, remember, precise speech leads to precise thought. I was precise. Sleep on it. Put it under your pillow. She was hardcore. And I said, okay. And, I can explain witchcraft all day, every day, have it make sense. This one, I've never been able to really wrap my head around. That shit works. And that's why we put our tarot cards under our pillow when we first get a deck, too. So there's something about that, just your head in contact with that, because all of a sudden that shit started making sense. And I'd sleep on that book every night, and every day it made more sense. And then, I realized what the problem is that it took Solomon 3 pages to say what we'll say in a short sentence now. It was just really long-winded, but nobody knew any of that shit. We have exposure to a lot more folk magics and that kind of stuff, where it makes more sense, easier for us to put that into context. And still to this day, a lot of hoodoo is using the Solomonic seals. They cut them out, put them in a mojo bag. They don't so much etch them into gold anymore, but
I mean, unless you really want to pay for that, but
yeah.
I love that you start people off with that. I love that you start people off with that.
Well, then they go into the Bible after that. And the first thing we're doing in the Bible is we're looking for the word wise. And then we're going to look at what that person is doing that's called wise. And we will find that they're doing very similar things, all the way down to the 3 wise men, the wise old woman of Endor.
Yep.
The other book will just come right out and say the word witch. Like, so I argue with Christians all the time. I say, hey, we're all over your book, man. We're in there. We're doing shit. People are calling on us. Kings are seeking our counsel and shit.
Yeah. I love pointing that out. I love pointing that out to people. One of the biggest projects I worked on in that company was I was in charge of going through any title that came through and ensuring that, so I had every copy of the Bible in my office that existed at that moment or whatever. I had really old ones from the 30s and some from the 1800s, and then modern Bibles and so on. Because if they used a quote from the Bible, it was my job, because this was before the internet, to go through and make sure word for word, period for period, quote for quote, etc., it was 100% correct. So I have read so many versions of the Bible that, like, it makes my brain hurt. It makes my brain hurt. There's so many. And telling people, and the thing is, you can argue with people till they're blue in the face, I'm like, or you're blue in the face, but there are so many people, very, very famous people in the Bible that y'all look up to, that sought out the advice of a witch, an oracle, like, what do you think an oracle is? Things like that. And they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. And I'm like, okay, then.
Yeah, it's the word wise, man. We're all over there. I mean, King Saul was allegedly hunting witches, but he knew where the prime witch was when he needed her help. And she helped him out, and it worked. Like, he couldn't, I think it was his priest couldn't call up his familiar spirit Samael. And So he went to her, and she did some stuff, and sure enough, Samael shows up. And I can't put it in biblical speak, but Samael basically said, well, I wasn't showing up because I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. But that battle you're going to have tomorrow, you're going to die. Sorry about that. And then he died. But then, we also, I always say that the witches know the Bible better than any Christian ever could, because we've been learning a language of symbols and metaphors our entire training.
Yep.
And that's what the book is.
Yeah.
Everything's a symbol or a metaphor for something else. All of the main characters were planets and or stars. All the way back to Cain slaying his brother Abel is found in the Sumerian text, but those are planets. They say Cain slayed his brother Abel, but they're talking about two planets specifically. And sure enough, right where they say that happened, we've got an asteroid belt, which, is what happens when planets get destroyed.
Yep. Speaking of
But there's
that,
Sumer-
I'll
yeah.
ask you this last thing, and then we'll head out since time is like doing this, and then we're gonna have you back on so we can talk about all kinds of other things.
Yeah, time's flying here.
I'm curious what everybody asks me about the damn 3-eye atlas thing. What do you think about it?
The what?
The big huge asteroid thing, comet, whatever, that's headed this way, that's supposed to be here at the end of the month.
Oh God. I'm 60. I have survived the end of the world countless times, man. It hasn't happened. I grew up hiding under my desk from the Russians going to blow us all up. It was always doomsday. And now, but who knows? We have pushed a comet. We know how to move comets, or not a comet, an asteroid.
Mm-hmm.
We can move them now with our technology. So I haven't seen anything legitimate. And I listen to Science Friday every week. That would probably come up if that was happening. I think it's another rapture.
I agree.
This week's rapture.
I don't speak on it very much, just because until there's concrete facts, I don't have an opinion. I don't have an opinion. Is it cool? Yep. Is it,
Yes.
something that won't ever come through our universe again? Cool. Yep. But I mean, nobody knows until it gets here. Nobody knows what's going to happen,
Yeah.
or if little green alien guys are going to jump off and be like, "What's up?" Mork from
Yeah,
Ork is
I-
going to
I-
come. I don't know. I'm down with
I'm
Mork
not-
from Ork coming. That
Yeah.
should be, we should
That
manifest
would be
that.
cool. That would be cool.
We should manifest that.
I'm more worried about people. As we've been talking, you'll find out about it soon enough. There's been a shooting in a Mormon church. I think 25 people hit or something like that.
Wow.
And with that, the Trouble with Pagans book coming out or whatever,
Yes.
Marta told me that Charlie Kirk wrote the foreword to that.
Yep.
So I was hoping we'd stay off their radar. I saw you calling out the Etsy witch that took credit for that. It's a bad idea. Just, to know, to will, to dare.
Yep.
And God damn it, remain silent.
Yeah.
Kids,
Yeah.
get us all killed. Unalived.
I don't know if you saw the video I put out. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. I was on Instagram, and I forget to post on Instagram. Sorry, Instagram. So I'm posting on Instagram, and I'm just scrolling, waiting for my post to come up. And all of a sudden I get this sponsored post from a law firm that was like, "Have you purchased witchcraft on
Oh,
Etsy?" And I was
God.
like, "Here we go." So I'm like,
Here we go.
you know what? Let me look. What kind of questions? So I screenshotted every single one. They want all of this information. And I'm like, first of all, I'm uncomfortable with you even asking these questions. You
Yeah.
don't need to know about my religious practices. You don't need to know about what I've done or ordered or whatever. And then they want your Etsy account. They want to know your Etsy account. Absolutely not, man. Absolutely not. Would you like my bank account to see like who else I've given money to? And then, then when you go to the very end, they already have all this stuff filled out. So they already have gotten everything from Instagram by the time you get to the end of that. They filled out my name, my phone number, my email. I was like, absolutely not. But I saw it coming. Like I saw it coming. I mean, I was a kid in the 80s, but I remember the Satanic Panic.
Yeah. We said it at the same time. Satanic Panic.
Yep. And I saw that book. I've got a video that I'm editing to get it put out too, because I saw all the creators posting as soon as that happened, there were already books out. And it's like, how are there already books out? And the fact that this person put the forward from him, and I don't know if that was planned or not planned, I don't believe in coincidences, so there's that. But all I could think about was, and I never can pronounce it right, but the Hammer of Witches, the Maleficorum in Latin.
Malleus
All I could think
Maleficarum.
about
Yeah,
was that.
absolutely.
All I could think about was
Absolutely.
that.
The Malleus Maleficarum, man. They got some stuff right in there.
They
I
did.
remember there was a section that talked about the nature of witches, and that we speak in low tones, and we treat animals as equals and speak to them as such. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that was true back then too, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. And I told everybody on, live stream and on the video I'm about to put out, like, if you don't have a copy of it, you need one. You need
Yeah.
one. Like, it's
hmm
16 bucks on Amazon. Like, get a physical copy of it, because
Yeah.
you need to know what they're taking a playbook
Well,
from. And I hate I hate that it has to be a thing. I hate that it has to be a thing
yeah.
again.
And back
Again.
to the satanic panic, Damien Eccles lives here.
Hmm.
He's one of the biggest cases of the satanic panic, I would say. And he was actually, studying Crowley. He wrote it on his shoe. Don't write it on your shoes, kids.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to know.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole everything frustrates me right now. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. I
Well,
don't
I
understand.
was warning about Project 2025 for like 2 years before anybody talked about it. People called me a fearmonger and a conspiracy theorist, and what I was saying, I still say now, is like, it's only a matter of time until we're the target. First they come for the trans people, then they come for the gay people, then they come for the witches. They always come for us. They will come for us.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
think Aradia even said that there can be no peace between us and them, unfortunately. And
And
the
I
only
hate that.
way to, yeah, and we just gotta keep silent. As soon as you run into that closed mind, just shut the hell up. Learn what our ancestors learned. Shut up. Stop talking to them.
Yep. I agree. I agree. This was such a great. I can't
It
believe that,
was.
like, an
I
hour.
can't
It's
believe
already
it's.
been almost an hour.
Yeah,
It's already been an hour.
I know. I know. I can't. It flew on by.
Well, I would love to have you back on. Maybe
Absolutely.
maybe closer to Yule. I would love to talk about Crowley and all of those practices, and maybe do a longer one than an hour, if you're open to it.
Sure. I'm on camera all day, every day anyway. So.
Well, thank you so much for
Thanks.
coming on. I
Thanks for
I
having me.
appreciate it.
Loved it.
And
Loved it. Thanks for having me.
hang out for just a minute. So, all right, guys. That's a lot. If you do not follow Uncle Birch, you can find him on all of the everywhere, right? I follow
Yeah,
you on TikTok.
some places have a number after them. On TikTok, it's to keep track of how many accounts I lost. I think I'm Uncle Birch 4 on Instagram. I don't know why I put 4 on there, because I never
Okay.
lost an Instagram. Yeah, everywhere I'm pretty much Uncle Birch, maybe with a number.
Okay. I'll put it in the description down below. I will stalk you and find all the links and put it down below for you
Yep.
guys that are watching this and hanging out, because I have
And you,
thoroughly enjoyed all of your videos, and I try not to, like, get you shadow banned by, like, watching and liking all of them. So I'm like,
yeah,
maybe don't do that. That wouldn't be a good friend thing to do.
yeah.
But
Well, that turned out, that the mass liking thing, that turned out not to be true.
mm,
Yeah, the algorithm doesn't do that. There's been like experts that studied it. So you can just like people all day
I
long.
will
It's,
totally do it
yeah,
then.
yeah. All
I
right.
will be that person, because I have spicy brain. So if I hyper focus on something or a creator or so, yeah, it's all of it. That's all of it. I'll be on it for days. And did you know this? Yeah, I'm that 5-year-old. So, all right, guys, we will see y'all later. I hope y'all